texting. And that was through a partnership with API Vote. Now, how do we empower our community? We partnered with several organizations to make that possible. We worked with the League of Women Voters, GOABA, API Votes, and also supervisor elections. We conducted judicial candidate forums with GOABA. We did candidate interviews and discussed positions and their issues. We also adopted a precinct with NAP in a supervisor elections office. We also launched a PSA about why voting is important. And also, but more importantly, working with API Votes, we were able to get the ballots translated not just in one language, but 2, 3 languages. That was an accomplishment in of itself. Now, what was the result of that? From that, folks, not just in Central Florida, heard our whisper and our roar. It spread all the way to Tallahassee and went beyond that. It went all the way to DC. We received a generous grant from API Vote of over $20,000. And from there, we received another one. And it's all possible because of our partnership with the community. And it all starts with everyone in this room. We partnered with the Women Voters and a handful of other organizations. And now we recently learned another statistic that from state voices, Orange County had the most AAPI new registered voters. I'm going to repeat that again because this is a monumental moment. Orange County, Florida, had the most AAPI new registered voters. That whisper is becoming a roar, and it's because we're united. So with the momentum of the past year, it's evident that the API voice is growing. But yet, there's so much more work to do. So today, we have the opportunity to address these issues head on, fostering understanding, empathy, and collaboration. By doing so, we can work together to build a stronger, more inclusive community that values and uplifts us all individually. So this evening, we'll discuss various topics. First, we'll talk about representation and civic engagement, exploring ways to enhance the representation of AAPI voices in local politics, decision-making processes, and community organization in partnership with AAPI Votes, supervisor elections, and a League of Women Voters, and other similar organizations. Second, we'll talk about a very tough discussion, but something that we need to talk about: discrimination and prejudice, addressing issues related to discrimination, racism, xenophobia, that AAPI individuals may encounter, and finding ways to combat such attitudes through education, awareness, and community support. And this is in partnership with the FBI and the DOJ. Finally, from our community, we will have the chance to hear directly from members of the AAPI community, allowing them to share their stories, experiences, and their concerns. It is vital that we are actively listening and empathize with their perspectives, as this will enable us to gain a comprehensive understanding of the challenges they face. So before I turn this over to my colleague Cam, I'd like to share a video from our national supporter, API Votes. We hope this video reinvigorates your reason for being here this evening.
I'm registering and voting because Asian American and Pacific Islander issues are American issues, and lawmakers hear us when we vote. And I'm issues are American issues, and lawmakers hear us when we vote. And I'm making sure my neighbor does the same.
I'm registering and voting for real healthcare solutions, and I'm making sure my colleagues do the same.
I'm registering to vote because I want to see our elders protected.
And you know I'm telling everyone I know.
Go out there, vote.
Vote for the change we want. Change we want.
I'm registering and voting because Asian American and Pacific.
And that was a message from our national supporter. Now I'm going to ask Kam Shenai the stage. Here's the mic.
You take us back. Before I start, I want to recognize somebody else who just walked in. It wasn't planned. That is our representative, Anna. Timely entrance. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Last year, when I stood here, we were half the crowd here, so it's good to see so many faces, some of them very familiar. Can everybody hear me okay? So I have one slide. That's all I have today, and it has only one word on it, and that's accountability. So my theme tonight is accountability. But before we get to that, let me share with you a few statistics about AAPI and what are the issues that we are facing, which will lead us to my accountability discussion. Nationally, AAPI, we are 25.6 million, which is 7% of the population. As a group, we are the fastest growing, very affluent, well-educated, and technologically savvy. There's a demographic with a buying power of $1.3 trillion. A billion, trillion, T as in total. And yet, with all these fantastic statistics, our AAPI government representation is 0.9%. 7% population share, less than 1% participation in the government. About 50% of the registered voters, AAPI voters, have said none of the parties have contacted us. Not Democrats, not Republican. So, in my simple mind, it means we are not only underrepresented, but we are also ignored. That's the fact. We are ignored because typically AAPI community has been the least likely to vote demographic in the country. We have dinner parties at home. Everybody has a solution for every problem that we have. Everybody has a solution. Gun violence, we have a solution. So to them I say, this is great that intellectually we know what to do, but unless we participate, unless we get involved, nothing will get done and we'll get the status quo that we're getting today. So least likely to vote group is a wrong label for us. For example, last year in Orange County, thanks to Danae and Bill, we got the numbers. 58 out of 100 AAPI registered voters decided they had something better to do on election day. 58 out of 100. So they have lost the right of arguing during dinner sessions. Go vote is my message. When you look inside the number, you will see that in the 2020 general election, our turnout was pretty good, but the 50 plus age group, their voter participation was 21 points better than our future generation. Something is wrong there. The Z generation participation was 20 points less. So from these statistics, in my simple mind, it is very, very clear that the Central Florida AAPI voting bloc of 60,000 can be very powerful if we flex our muscles during the voting time. 50,000, 60,000 votes is a lot of votes. I I think in 2018, the senatorial race was won by maybe less than 10,000 votes. The governorship race was won by less than 15,000. And we alone have 60,000 votes if we can vote. So with that, those statistics kind of, I call them brutal facts. Those are the facts. Let's switch to the AAPI community issues. They are the same. They have been the same ever since I was born, I would say. Or at least I was born in the US when I came here in 1976. Same issue. What are they? Hate crime, gun control, reproductive rights, immigration, healthcare, education, jobs, democracy. Haven't you heard this before? Why aren't we fixing them? We'll get to that. Then there are the local issues, like high home insurance, high rents. I was talking to my handyman, he says, I can't afford the rent, so I'm going to move into a mobile home. And he's going to share it with two people with $1,000 rent, so his rent will be $500. Now, that's an issue. Has it been fixed? No. But we still don't want to vote. Most of these issues, as I said, have been around for years. For years. So the question is, why aren't they being addressed? That leads me to the accountability discussion. So you got the facts, you know what the issues are, so why aren't we fixing them? And I'm glad some of the state representatives are here. And even at the federal level, Frost, you can take this message back to the congressman too. And we'll be very happy to talk to him in a very collaborative way. Because one thing we are lost these days, nobody talks in a civil fashion. Everybody is angry. I don't understand that. I came there in 1976, 47 years ago, it wasn't like this. So let me give you two examples. First one is about hate crime and gun control. Last year, one of the TV reporters asked me a question. What do you think about hate crimes? She was a young reporter, so I reminded her of 1984. In 1984, that is 39 years ago. 39 years ago. What happened on that day, a July day, was a person walked into a McDonald's with a big gun and he killed point blank 20 people. That was 1984. This is 2023. I may even remember these numbers now. In 2014, there were, I may be off by a little, maybe a couple. In 2014, there were 200 and some mass shootings. In 2024, there were 600 and some mass shootings. As of May 9th, there are 203 mass shootings. So if you look at a graph, BBC produces this graph, you'll see a line upward. I come from corporate America. If I had a slide like that, I would have been fired 9 times for not doing my job. Now, there is something, this is not new. This issue has been around for years. Would you agree? Take another example, and I see a couple of nurses and nurse, and Aga, where is Aga? There is Aga. He's in his nursing uniform. He has come from his work right here. He's on the court team. And you tell me whether I'm wrong. There are 4.2 million registered nurses in the United States. Their average age is 52. In the next 7 years, we will have 1 million nurses in the US will leave the workforce. We have had this issue forever. Same issue, number of years, same people, not fixed. Isn't it getting mad? I just don't understand it, so let me go on. Most of the issues like immigration, I don't want to name them again, have been around for years and years, but have not been fixed. Why not? we have state representatives, they can correct me if my numbers are off. 95% of the incumbents who run get re-elected. And the fact that there are over 30% of the races go uncontested. I think in Florida it was 42% uncontested races. Isn't that a shame? And what that tells me is the lawmakers who could not fix the problem are still there. That's a fact. When you look at on TV and look at the Senate, you'll see the same faces. Same faces of the people who couldn't fix the problem. So how do we hold them accountable? We've got to hold our lawmakers to account. All of us must go out and vote in droves. I mean, there should be so much of traffic that there should be a traffic jam. There's 60,000 of us. Imagine after mail-in votes and all that stuff, there are, let's say, 30,000 people left, all of them going on that day to vote. And we must elect candidates whose policies are consistent with what we care about. Not political nonsense. That's how we hold people to account. There's some good news. In 2020 presidential election, the AAPI turnout was 71%. We all woke up, I think. But then I found out from Bill taught me this. He said it's all ballot driven, whether it's a president, good senatorial race, or let's say a good referendum, people show up. But right now, the election that's coming up next year is a presidential election. And there are still burning issues that are not being resolved. Crime, gun violence, reproductive rights, immigration, all issues that they're passionate about. And that's where with a block of 60,000 votes plus, we can make a huge difference. So let me end by saying a couple of things. AP's mission, as Alan described it, pretty simple. They are not complicated. Nothing is complicated. Solving these problems is not complicated. We try to make it complicated. So we are here to work with our community partners, I'll mention them, to engage the AAPI community to get out and vote. And I urge each of you here, get involved. Please don't say I don't have the time. All we have to do is take 30 minutes per week, 30 minutes per week, out of the time we spend on WhatsApp and Facebook, and do something to motivate your next door neighbor to come and do this. And I won't bore you with math because I'm an engineer and I calculate. If you take those 30 minutes, times the 60,000 people, my calculator says error. That many hours of community service each of us can do. Just look at the mirror. Are we doing it? And then let's lock arms and let's amplify our voice to do what? Convert the roar into a tsunami. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kam. If there's anything that you learned from this evening, is that Kam is infamous for his terms. Last year, it was whisper to a roar, and now he's taken us another notch from a roar to a tsunami. So that's going to be a tall order. But thank you very much, Kam, for sharing your thoughts. The next segment of this town hall is about community partnerships and how they play a vital role in encouraging people to vote by building trust, mobilizing grassroots efforts, raising awareness, addressing barriers, leveraging social influence, and fostering sustained engagement. This collaboration with local stakeholders, voter turnout can be increased, resulting in a more representative and vibrant democracy. And one of our community partners is actually the Supervisor Elections Office, and they've been very supportive throughout this process for us by providing us space, resources, and the tools to be effective in a community. And the liaison and representative for the Supervisor Elections Office is Danae Rivera. She's a communications and community outreach coordinator, and she is an alumna of UCF and Georgetown, and has been working with the elections office for over 5 years. She's been a very key component with the work that we do, and I can't thank her enough, and I'm honored to bring her up on stage to say a few words. Thank you, Ann. And hello, everybody. I hope you can all see me over the podium. And sorry to disappoint for anyone expecting Bill Cows as well. But I just want to thank you all for coming out and talk a little bit about voting and the upcoming elections and what we need to do to be prepared for that. As Kam was mentioning, your vote is so important, especially in local elections. Local elections have a much bigger impact on our day-to-day lives than the bigger presidential elections, but those tend to get a much bigger turnout than the local elections. And many people are only aware of presidential elections or maybe presidential and midterm elections, so maybe voting once every 2 years. Here in Orange County, we rarely go more than about 8 months without an election. So just for example, this past March, you may have seen we had some elections for local officials such as city commissioners in Ocoee and Maitland. Turnout was about 13% in those elections. Yes, and this November, the city of Orlando will be having an election. Next year, 2024, as Kam mentioned, is a presidential election. Many people will only turn up in November, but there are 3 elections next year, and many local races on the ballot in March and August, some of which will be decided in those elections before the majority of the people turn out in November. So very important to vote in all of these elections if you're eligible. And there are many things you can do ahead of time to make sure it goes smoothly. First, of course, is to make sure you're registered to vote. And just so everyone knows, the deadline for new Florida registrations is 29 days before an election. Now, if you're already registered, don't even worry about that deadline, but just for anyone else who may want to vote in an election, if they register later than 29 days before, they will be eligible to vote in the following election, but not the one coming up. The second is to keep your information up to date. Very important, so you get communication from our office and you don't have any issues when you show up at the polls. So making sure that if your name or address has changed, you contact our office to get it updated. Updating it with the DMV and the USPS doesn't necessarily update your registration. So make sure that you're contacting us. Another important thing is to make sure that you're reading any of the mail that we send you. Very important information about your current political party, if you have a vote by mail request on file, dates for early voting, a lot of important information that we send you. We don't send you stuff just to say, hi, how's it going? So just making sure that you're actually looking at and reading the material that we send you, which is also why we need to have your address up to date. And you can also make sure that your signature is updated, which is very important. Signatures change all the time. If you registered back on your 18th birthday and it's been a little while since then, your signature has probably changed since you were in high school. So injury, illness, all kinds of things can cause a signature to change. And that is very important, especially if you're voting by mail. And I want to bring up vote by mail also because some of you may or may not know, but the law changed somewhat recently. And so now any vote by mail requests that were made before last year's general election in November expired at the end of last year. So if you are wanting to continue voting by mail or vote by mail for the first time, you need to submit a new request. And the deadline to request a vote by mail ballot is 5 p.m. 10 days before the election. But the earlier the better, and you want to send it back as soon as possible so we can actually help you out with that tonight. And if you make a request now, you can make sure that it is good for all elections through the end of next year. So that you set it, forget it, don't have to worry about it. So like I said, we have a table in the back of the room there with the bright orange and the flags and everything. And back there, we have some goodies. And more importantly, we have forms so we can help you register to vote, update your registration. If you're not sure, it doesn't hurt to update it. and also submit a vote by mail request if you'd like. Another way that you can get involved is by communicating with your elected officials, also kind of off of what Cam was saying. And we have a brochure in the back there that has all the elected officials in Orange County and their contact information. Another way that you can be involved is to sign up to be a poll worker, and it's not volunteer, we will pay you. And depending on what position you are in, you can earn up to $350 for it. So if that is what you needed to sign up, then there you go. And we are always looking for more poll workers, especially bilingual, multilingual poll workers, very important so that we can help offer assistance to all voters in our community. And if you are part of a nonprofit, non-political organization, you can also sign up for our Adopt a Precinct program, which mentioned briefly in her remarks, but it's a really great program where a nonprofit, non-political organization can sign up, and the members of that organization all staff the same polling place. And at the end of election day, instead of being paid individually, the individual pay would be combined into one check to the organization. So it's a great way to raise money for your organization, get your members involved, and also for the taxpayer money that goes into poll workers to get back into our community. And lastly, I just want to remind everyone that our office, the elections office, is the trusted source of election and voting information. As we get closer to bigger and more contentious elections coming up next year, you will start to see more and more information on social media, in your mailbox, all those text messages we love getting around election season where we're just getting texted every 2 hours about voting and vote by mail. Not all of the information will be accurate, and sometimes it's wrong by mistake, and sometimes it's wrong on purpose. And if the information does not come from our office, just don't automatically assume that it is correct. We all need to do our part to make sure that bad election information isn't spreading. So if you're not sure it's correct, also please don't share it to others. If you're ever having any questions or doubt about something that you received, you're not sure if mail that came from our office actually came from our office and is official election information, just give us a call, go to our website. If there's anything major, we post on our website, don't worry about this, or this is the information on the elections. So we're always here to give you the information that you need, the accurate information. And we have materials in the back there with our website and our phone number. So if you need to get in touch with us, we're here. You can email us as well. And so I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that because that will be heating up here. But thank you again all for coming and showing your commitment to improving your community by voting and getting involved. And like I said, we'll be in the back all night. If you have any questions or want to sign up for anything, just let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Danae. Can you tell why we rely on her so much? She's such a wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate the partnership. The next community partner that we would like to invite to the podium is from the League of Women Voters of Orange County. They've done a lot of outreach with us in the community from different events and cultural events all the way to UCF. So we want to thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have Kathy Sheeran. Kathy has been a member of the League of Women Voters of Orange County since 2015. Currently, she serves on the board of directors and is co-chair of the Voter Services Committee. We also have Gina Hall. Gina has been an active member of the League of Women Voters of Orange County since 2018. She's currently the board of directors, co-chair of the Voter Services Committee, and a member of the membership committee. Previously, she served on the Gun Safety Committee. So come and join us on the podium. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us here tonight. Again, my name is Kathy, and I'd first like to tell you a little bit about the League of Women Voters. Here's some information about the League. Our league was founded in 1939, and our mission is empower voters and defend democracy. Just like Pam said about empowering the community, we're empowering the voters. And we're a nonpartisan grassroots organization. We will never endorse or oppose any political candidate. What we do is give you the information so you can make an informed decision. However, sometimes after studying an issue, we will support or oppose a certain issue, like a certain ballot amendment. And a good example of that is currently the League is supporting a petition to get a clean water rights initiative on the 2024 November ballot. So to me, clean water is not a partisan issue. Everybody wants clean water. So that's why we're supporting it. And if anyone is interested in helping support that, we have petitions on the back table. If you'd like, after the presentation, feel free to fill out and sign a petition. We would definitely appreciate it. And also, the League of Women Voters of Orange County is a nonprofit, tax-deductible 501c3 organization. Any money that you donate to the League is fully tax-deductible. And on that note, we'd also like to invite every one of you here that isn't a member to join our League. And men are also welcome to join the League. We have a lot of men who are active members of the League. If you're interested, we have membership information on the back table. Now, let me tell you a little bit about some of the activities of the League. Our core mission is to register voters. The only reason we're not registering voters tonight is because we're deferring to our hosts, the supervisor of elections. But normally when we're out in the community, that's our core mission. We also, another important aspect is educating voters. We have new voting laws. We're telling the community about them. We're also telling you ways to vote. You can vote by mail, as Danae talked about before. You can do early voting, or you can vote on election day. We tell you about the 3 different options. And we also do research on candidates and issues. We also encourage people to vote. It's one thing registering a person to vote, but if you don't get them to the poll, what good does it do? We want to get those numbers up there and see more than just 13% turnout at the last election, or 42% of the Asian American community. That number, we need to get that number way up there. As Danae also talked about, adopt a precinct. The League members have volunteered to be poll workers in the past. And in 2022, we staffed 8 precincts throughout Orange County. And in 2023, we've already staffed 1 precinct for the March election, and we're hoping to staff at least 1 precinct in this November's election. And if you join the League, it's more than just voting. We have many other advocacy committees that if you're interested in, you could get involved with, such as natural resources, government, education, transportation, affordable housing, women's rights, all the issues that affect the AAPI community and all the communities. So please, feel free to join us. And now I'm going to introduce Gina and let her talk about working with the AAPI community.
Thank you, Kathy. So about 2 years, got a call from Cam and On saying, here's who we are, we'd like to work with you. So we developed a partnership. It's been a great partnership. And we wanted to talk about, so how can we work together? So we talked about conducting voter registration and voter education events. As Kathy said, as Cam said, as On said, it's one thing to register to vote. It's one thing to be educated, but you gotta finish. You gotta vote. And if it's vote by mail, early voting, or day of election, you really have no excuse. So it's important, I told Cam this the very first time I talked to him, how are we gonna reach out? How are we gonna touch people? How are we gonna get people engaged? I said, we gotta go to where they work, where they play, and where they live.
So the type of events that we have, that we partner with the AAPI community, is going to be at different places through the community, because we realize you work, you play, and you live at different places. So we'll probably be popping up at a lot of different venues, and that's what we need to do to get that 42% up and to get people out to vote. Local elections are important, state elections are important, national elections are important. Well, let's take a quick look at why. That's me. Okay, so on a national level, there's a lot of social justice needs, a lot of social justice issues, immigration issues, we've heard a lot about that. And then we've heard a lot about military and foreign affairs things. And this comes from national elections, where we elect a president, our senators, our national representatives. Those are the kind of things that they're going to key in on. And that's important. But on a state level, we're looking at college debt. You know, we have a lot of colleges and universities in this state. And how much is tuition? How much debt are people encountering? Minimum wage in this state right now, it's $11. It's going to go up to $12 on September 30th. But $11? That's not enough to live on. I realize there are some communities, some organizations, some companies that pay higher than that, but it's because they feel a need to, not because they're required by law. Healthcare, big issue here. We've had a lot of conversations and a lot of things in the news about Medicaid and how some of those roles have been cut. So we need to continue to bring that up. And the environment. Kathy just mentioned the Clean Air Amendment. So those are things that if you're interested in, you got to vote in elections that target state initiatives and state programs. And finally, locally. And I will submit to you that this is the type of actions that you encounter every day. How many people in the last week have been involved in traffic? The local issue. Do we have enough roads? How many people, when they're in traffic, are on really smooth roads? No. I don't know about you, but roads are getting worse. Okay? That's a local deal. You know, I live out by UCF and their University Boulevard. If you've been on that road recently, it's terrible. And I've written to my local commissioner, and she says it's in the pipeline. They keep me updated, but I'm still waiting. And I'm not faulting my commissioner, but there needs to be a push in terms of how do we get these shovel-ready projects going. That's not a national election, that's local. So we need to be concerned about what we're doing on a national basis, get out and vote in those national elections, state elections, but I would challenge you to say in any person in our local community that the local elections, where unfortunately the fewer people vote, are the things that impact us on a day-to-day basis more than any other bucket up there. Kathy?
Thank you, Gina. Danae already touched on some of these issues. Hopefully everyone who's here is registered to vote if you're eligible. If not, get to that back table immediately. If you need to make any changes, again, get to that back table immediately. Like Danae said, change of address, if you want to change your political party, any changes whatsoever. And also, I also think you need to check your voting status. If you're registered, but it has been a few years since you've last voted, check your status. After so often, you go on the inactive roll. You show up to vote, sorry, you're inactive. So please check that as well. That's critical. And I put up here, as Danae said, the city of Orlando is having its elections. November 7th is election day. Early voting is October 30th to November 5th. So I challenge everyone that lives in the city of Orlando in this room tonight to get out and vote in that election. There's Orlando mayor and several city commission seats up for grabs. As Gina said, those local elections will impact you on a day-to-day basis. So get out and vote. No excuses. And to wrap this all up, what can you do? Be an informed voter. That's number one. Not only vote, but be informed. Don't just eeny, meeny, miny, moe. And then, as Kim said before, get your friends to vote. Take another friend with you to the election office. Get them to vote too. Or help them get a vote by mail ballot. Do whatever you need to do to get people motivated to vote. And then you say, well, I need to know something about these candidates or these issues. I've got an answer for that too. Vote411.org. This is a website sponsored by the League of Women Voters. It's a national website. So no matter where you are in this country, you put your address in that website and it'll bring up your ballot for election day. So for many of you, we may not have an election this year unless you live in the city of Orlando. In 2024, this is going to be critical. We'll have information on all the candidates running for every single office, from president down to the local dog catcher. And then some other websites here. Again, I'll put a plug in the supervisor of elections office. And then some other information here, votesmart.org and ballotpedia.org. If you hear things about election information and you don't know if it's real or fake news, go to these websites. These are legitimate sources of factual information. And then the Election Protection Hotline, 866-OUR-VOTE. It's a toll-free number that you can call if you're at the ballot box on election day and you're having issues. The poll person says, wait a minute, you're not eligible to vote. And you say, yes, I am. You can call, or you're feeling intimidated. There are certain people standing around that are trying to intimidate certain groups from going in to vote. Call this number. Help will be on the way. So it's a really great source that will help you out on election day. Or if you have any questions prior to election day, you can call that too. And now I'm going to turn it back to Gina.
Okay, the last thing I want to say two things. One is, when you sign up to vote by mail or any ballot that you're signing to register to vote, take out your phone and take a picture of your signature. Because a lot of times when you go to vote, you're gonna put your signature on something and they're gonna check it and it needs to match. Okay, and as Danae said, sometimes our signatures change. So just take a picture of it. We try to tell all our young people the same thing. Take a picture of it and just make sure that you're signing in the way that you sign these documents. That'll be really important. But to close, here's a quote that I think is so apropos to what we're talking about today from our 32nd President Franklin Roosevelt. He said, no one will ever deprive American people of the right to vote except for the American people themselves. And the only way they can do that is by not voting. So thank you. Get out and vote. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Gina and Kathy. We look forward to continuing our partnership, and you will see us in the community, as they mentioned, where you work, where you play, and where you live. So the next segment that we have, I'm really honored to have them here as well. But before I introduce them, I wanted to share a statistic that I learned recently. In 2022, Asian American Voter Survey conducted by API Vote, AAPI Data, and Asian American Advancing Justice, it's reported that 73% of Asian American registered voters worry about experiencing hate crimes harassment, and discrimination, at least sometimes. And 24% said they worry about it very often. So for those reasons alone, community partnerships are vital for educating people about Asian hate crimes. By working together, we can create a more informed and supportive society that actively combats hate crimes and promotes inclusivity. So our next community partner is the FBI. We have 2 special agents here joining us, but one has been volunteered. We have special agent, assistant special agent in charge, Ian Kaufman, who's in the audience, entered on duty to FBI in 2007. In 2021, he was selected for his current assignment as FBI Tampa Counterterrorism. Our speaker this evening is Special Agent Torrance Slaughter. I did ask him how to pronounce his last name, and he said it's Slaughter, as in slaughter. He joined the FBI in 2008, worked in the Atlanta Division and FBI headquarters as a supervisor agent criminal investigation division, and currently works in the Tampa division and Orlando division. S.A. Slaughter has been in law enforcement for over 25 years, beginning his career right here in Orange County Sheriff's Office. So I'd like to welcome you on stage, or the podium.
Thank you, Lon. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you guys for inviting us out. I can't go on without saying something to Tom Lynn in the back. Me and Tom worked together at Orange County Sheriff's Office for many, many years. Good to see you. I'd like to acknowledge my boss, Special Agent in Charge, Ian Kaufman. He's sitting in the audience. So what I like to do, I like to talk to the audience. And so what I want to do is just give a quick overview about what FBI Tampa is all about. FBI Tampa, we know that state of Florida is the third largest state in the United States. We have about, FBI Tampa covers about 18 counties, Orlando's included. My job there is to investigate civil rights. Civil rights covers hate crime, color of law, and FACE Act. FACE Act is freedom access to clinic entrances and also to religious places of worship. I'm very passionate about working these type of investigations. One is, like Lon said, this is my home. I was blessed and fortunate to get back here to working on Orlando. And I think that civil rights sometimes, when we look at the priorities of the FBI, FBI priorities is we protect Americans. We uphold the Constitution. We make sure that we're safe from terrorism. We make sure that cyber attacks doesn't happen. We deal with white collar crimes, and then we deal with civil rights, which is what I do. I go out throughout the community, and I would love to come back at some point. I give trainings on what civil rights, what it involves. Because a lot of people don't have an understanding of how we go about the authority that we have to investigate these crimes and what these crimes constitute. Tonight, I just want to talk just a little bit about what, civil rights and what that program entails. We deal with a set of statutes. I'm sure that DOJ is going to come up and talk a little bit about that part of it. But what gives us the ability to go out and do it is the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Act, Hate Crime Prevention Act. That gives us authority to go out and investigate these crimes. What is a hate crime? Anyone in the audience? Somebody got to talk to. So it's words, hate crime. Base. Absolutely. And that's the key. And that's what I'm looking for. So to educate a little bit about what we do, we get a lot of calls coming in about hate crime. Someone, I don't care how bad, excuse me here, foul words, hatred towards another person, words alone is not crime enough for us to do something. It has to have that added sense to go on. A willful act to commit violence, means a threat, harm, bodily harm, or something else. But the FBI is here to help. We're here. We're in the community. We're your community partners. My main focus is another agent. We cover the whole FBI Tampa investigate civil rights violations. We're here to help. More than anything, I want to get that across to this community that anything that comes across, if I can't help, we have a very robust relationship with our stakeholders in the community. And it's something that it doesn't need a federal nexus. I work hard with our state partners and local partners to see what we can do in respect to get something violent, get something prosecuted. That's my job. And that's why I'm here. At some point, I do want to come back because again, I can get in more detail on some training about to educate a little bit about what is a hate crime, the definition of a hate crime, the statutes that we use to follow us, to guide us, to prosecute. To help, we're here. And if you guys ever need us, please do not hesitate to pick up the phone and give us a call. On has our information. I'm here locally here in Orlando and willing to take calls all day long. And if something that I can't do, again, because we have a great relationship with our partners here in the community, we work together. We want to make sure that everyone in this community is safe and they're not afraid or don't want to talk because, again, if you see something, you have to say something. And that's the main thing. And so I want to part with that and just let you know that, hey, we're here as a community partner here to help you guys. And I'm sure there'll be some questions at the end. I'm willing to take any questions. We can talk about it because, again, I can get into I want to come back and provide a real robust training for you guys to break it down about what civil rights and what hate crime is all about. But more importantly, I want to let you guys know that the FBI is here. We're looking forward to work with you guys in any capacity that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, and you're more than welcome to come back and provide us with the training. Voluntoed or not, we will welcome you. The next community partner, but before I share the next community partner, I want to also say that we do have local members in the audience who can speak to what local officials can do to address incidents, hate incidents. We have folks in the state attorney's office. We also have folks in the sheriff's office, which we'll be discussing a little bit more during open discussion. So I want to introduce the next person. I had a chance to work with Ashley Washington for the DOJ several years ago. And from there, we just stayed connected because of the work that she's doing is continuing to lay a foundation for the rest of our community. I'll let her introduce a little bit more about her work, but let me give you a little bit of her background. So she's been with the DOJ's in the criminal division since 2016. She handles a variety of cases, anywhere from child exploitation to civil rights cases. She's currently the criminal civil rights coordinator for the district. I'd like to invite you up here and share what you have to share with the rest of the community.
So I am an assistant United States attorney, which just means federal prosecutor. I'm actually up in Jacksonville, but as An said, I'm the criminal civil rights coordinator for the district. So what that means is that anytime that there is a civil rights violation that comes in through a complaint, something that I see that could be a potential civil rights violation, something that comes in through the news, I try to follow the news from all over our district, then I try to make sure I get in contact with someone in one of our offices. So for the Middle District of Florida, we're at the top of the state, Jacksonville, through Ocala, Orlando, so when we talk about civil rights, Torrance gave you an idea of what we need. So hate crimes has been talked about a lot in the news. I'm sure we've seen incidents both in Orlando and Jacksonville of things like words that are being broadcast outside of buildings and public spaces, things like that that are offensive. And so things like that a lot of times are going to be hate incidents. As On says, they're offensive, they're rude, they're usually at a place that's particularly hurtful, maybe before the Florida-Georgia game that happened in Jacksonville, somewhere where they're going to get noticed. And so a lot of times there are things that you feel like someone should really do something, but unfortunately, a lot of things like that are protected by the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And so for things like that, we can't always do something, but it's still important to bring those incidents to the attention of law enforcement before they become that incident that is accompanied by violence or something more serious, because you don't know if that's the first step to more. And so it is so critical, whether it is the FBI, your local law enforcement, reporting directly to the U.S. Attorney's Office, since we do have a complaint mechanism. You can write our office directly, go to our website, you can contact Main Justice, meaning Department of Justice up in DC, Civil Rights Division. There's a hotline phone number, really just making it known, since these might be the early steps to something more. I mean, there are cases where someone might have posted something on Facebook a couple of times. Those words were not enough for a hate crime, but when they followed it up with a picture of a gun and targeted at someone, then it crossed the line and became a hate crime. So just something that starts out that way may not be clear to you, but maybe law enforcement knows that 6 other incidents, and to monitor this, they'll see the one that is the one that becomes a hate crime. So a lot of times, we're not going to know of all the incidents, we're not going to know what happens, and that's when we rely on the community so much to be the eyes and ears. But we're not asking you to become lawyers, become special agents in your free time. It's just about, reporting it and being able to document those things so that we're in an informed position that we can try to help before we have the large-scale incidents that we've seen happen around the country. Being partners with all of you really help try to prevent those things from happening. And so I just encourage you all, when we're talking about civil rights violations, hate crimes, it comes in so many different forms. It can be symbols, it can be words somewhere, whether it's posted online. And think about online, there's so many different sources, social media, different places. Law enforcement can't see everything, so they need the eyes and ears of the community. It can be different writings places, whether someone has, or things like manifestos, but it could be simpler, journal entries. It could be spray painted somewhere. It could be an encounter, you see, observe in a store in front of you, anywhere, on a bus. It can be other things too in the community. We've seen the flyering that's happened in the community. The flyering, of course, where people come and they drop flyers or offensive statements, that's happened, I know, throughout Florida. Again, not by itself a hate crime, but reporting those incidents are helpful to tracking what's going on and may lead up to one. And so again, just encourage you to really report anything to law enforcement. It may seem like, oh, this may not be a big deal, but you just simply never know. One of the other things we do cover is for civil rights violations are other types of things. So that might include interactions with the police that may be excessive force. Those are things you might see in the news. Other types of interactions that might violate your rights. Fair housing. Is someone being treated poorly or denied housing because of something like their race, their ethnic origin, their religion? You've seen other things where people might be vandalizing your home or going after you at your home because of one of those characteristics. That would also still be civil rights violation. If something's happening to you at a school or workplace, particularly if there's some sort of federal funding involved, so a school, a federal workplace, things that are happening there could be civil rights violations. There's lots of ways to do it beyond a hate crime. So again, I just encourage you to report these things since you are our eyes and ears. So just a very surface level of what we do at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm on the criminal side. There is a civil side too. So if you're a member of the military, for instance, and your rights are being violated, for instance, if you get drafted, or not drafted, excuse me, if you get orders and you have to deploy and you're having trouble maybe getting out of your lease, issues with your car, things like that, encourage you to reach out to ask for help if you're encountering problems, since there's a lot of different resources available, both directly at the U.S. Attorney's Office level and up in DC in terms of our Department of Justice Civil Rights, which is civil and criminal. Good. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you making a drive from Jacksonville to be here this evening. And we can look forward to continuing the partnership. The next segment is the segment that I think most people here are looking forward to most. And I want to invite Amy to come up here. She's the current president of the National Association of Asian American Professionals, and she will be taking lead on this next discussion point, which is open to the greater audience.
Hello, everyone. Maya Angelou said, "We all should know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all the threads of the tapestry are equal in value, no matter what their color." Again, my name is Amy Akamine. I'm the current president of the National Association of Asian American Professionals, the Orlando chapter. We're actually a national association, been around for 41 years. This local chapter has only been around since 2019. And really our goal is to build leaders in the AAPI community. We are the bridge connecting cultures, professions, and the next generation. I'm honored to be the moderator for this evening's event. And before we begin, what I'd like to do is to showcase on a local level what we've been able to do together. So those are areas that we talked about earlier, being hate crimes and gun control. So one of the local solutions that's occurred is here in Orange County addressing hate crimes. And what I'd like to do is introduce Deputy Tom Lynn, who's also a member of ACT. And he's with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. And he was really the driving force, the champion for change, putting together a group called the AAPI Liaisons. It started out in January of 2022, and it was really based on community input. And he was working closely with Sheriff John Mina, and through that collective effort internally, they've been able to put together this liaison group that's been able to assist and be a part of the community here. So what I'd like to do is invite Deputy Lynn up here to talk a little bit about the liaison group and to help you understand a little bit more about what they do and who they are as a resource, as well as how you can connect with them.
Actually, I think I'm probably talking loud enough without this. But, if you have problems here, let me know, please. First one, you didn't see that. First, I want to thank everyone for coming. All our distinguished guests. I consider all everyone here distinguished guests today. I want to thank the FBI, the DOJ, and I gotta say this. Florence here. We used to, when we were young, run around. We actually ran a police football because of our height difference. So I was up on the line to get that. But anyway, he was a good man, good CEO. About our group, in 2021, we started to community on an outreach for the Asian community, and they contacted the sheriff's office and said, "Hey, we could probably use a little more help in our community." And in about 2022, help with the help of people like Mayor's Office, Charlie Wong, been I've known a long time, fantastic help as well. And with all 30 plus ethnicities, Asian groups out there, and a growing population, they felt that, yeah, we probably need to do something out here for the Asian community. So Sheriff Mina, bless his heart, he actually lived in Rome, a lot of ideas I had, and a lot of ideas I got from him as well. Well, the first thing is we established a AAPI website on the Sheriff's Office, which I would thank the guy for allowing us some of their information. We've also put this online as well, the links. Well, the API email, which everyone can access, it allows us the ability to have someone talk to us, reach out to us. Sometimes as Asians, we tend, or especially older ones, no offense, old crowd here, but they tend to be quiet individuals, reserved individuals. Even growing up, I'd like ask my father, hey dad, what about this? And crickets, like, yeah, your son talk to me. But yeah, but sometimes they're hard to reach out to. And the email address is for that very reason. If you don't feel comfortable about calling 911 or something like that, but you should call 911 if there's a bad phone, but if there's something else other than that, we've actually activated that email, and we've actually been using it. So once someone has emailed me, or emailed us, we then distribute it to whatever deputy can handle it. I have 12 Asian liaison deputies, and we try to make sure we can resolve your problem, be back with you as soon as possible. We'll try to resolve it, whether it's criminal or a civil nature, we try to point you in the right direction. The second part is, and I think we just, the state turns off to touch on this, is what if it's a kind of hate incident? Well, again, the sheriff was very gracious about it a long time ago with some ideas, so now we were able to implement, where someone calls in and there's an incident last year, I think, called Cajun Crab. And some, everyone remembers that. But it went viral. It was kind of more like hate speech. It didn't quite rise to a level of crime, but it was still, very venomous type speech. And when they called, at first they're told, well, we can't really do nothing for you because it's not hate crime. But I was able to get the sheriff working on this, where now that we can actually track it, I was able to do it in a way where I can, it won't be listed as a hate crime, but a hate incident, hate speech, hate rhetoric. And we're able to give out a tracking number on that, if you will. And we actually go back to track that if there's further incidents, these folks. And the other thing that we're able to do is I had our INS section, and they're we're happy with me, I push for it. But they send me every month a list of all any Asian victims crimes in Orange County. And I review it, and I see if I see a problem where it's a hate crime, flags, will flag detectives on that. If it's something where it's getting more and more of a problem in a certain area, we can send out flags, there's a problem coming up. And we outreach direct resources for that. So these are things that we've accomplished here. And we've gone to many events, and try to get the outreach to 1,000 people out here. And more and more start to become more comfortable with us, and using the email system as well as if not call. But again, I encourage you, if it's really bad, call 911. I just briefly want to just say something on a personal note as far as voting real quick. I don't know if anyone, probably my age or so, but from back in the 17th century, there was an anti-interracial law about marriage. I don't know if anyone remembers that case. It came about came to a head in 1967, Loving versus Virginia. And at that time, I lived in Virginia. And my parents, my father was Chinese, my mom was American, but that's one of those things where it still was overturned in 1972. I'm like going, Dad, Mom, you guys okay here? You're married, right? So you're good, right? But it was overturned. And that didn't come about because, people probably got involved, people out and voted, and it made a difference out there. And that's why I would say that, you and I can make a difference out in this world if we get out there, get active, and get involved. Okay? All right. So thanks very much for having me.
Thank you, Tom. We appreciate your service. So again, from a local level, when it does evolve to become something under a hate crime, it then obviously will go to the court system. Now, what I'd like to do is to invite State Attorney Monique Worrell, the 9th District Circuit Court for the state of Florida, who's seeking justice in Orange County and Osceola County. What I'd like to do is for her to share within the process when it comes into the system to be able to help us understand what occurs.
pleasure to be here with you all this evening. I really appreciate the richness of the cultural diversity that we enjoy here in Orange County. And one of my initiatives as your state attorney is to embrace that diversity and do everything that we can with the state attorney's office to appreciate the fact that we have residents from all different cultures and all different backgrounds, and that it's important that we pay special attention to that cultural diversity and do everything that we can to protect that diversity. So as it respects to hate crimes in our community, I'm pleased to understand that at least for 2022, there weren't any reported hate crimes against the AAPI community. And that's a wonderful thing, it's a great thing. But I can speak to you more broadly about what do we do in the state attorney's office once we receive a case from the sheriff's office or any of the other 19 police agencies that we take cases from, how that works through our system and what the end result is. So when cases come in from the sheriff's office or from Orlando Police Department or any of the other agencies, they go through our intake system. And in intake, we have attorneys who read those arrest reports and they make a determination as to whether or not this is a case that we can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I've talked a lot about beyond a reasonable doubt here in recent times because that is a standard that we are held to as prosecutors. We can't just file cases because something was alleged to have taken place. We actually have to be able to have evidence to show that that thing actually took place. And what happens a lot of times is that people will complain of something that happened, but by the time we get into the court system, people will change their minds. They'll get nervous, they'll get intimidated by the legal process, and they won't want to move forward with prosecution of a particular matter. And when that happens, then we end up having to drop cases. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. So by the time it gets to the intake stage, you're already talking about 30 days after the incident has taken place, right? We have to wait for law enforcement to submit it to us, and then we have to make sure that we have all of the charging affidavits in place. We need to make contact with any witnesses or victims in the case. We need to make sure that we have sworn statements from the individuals who were involved. So by the time all of that takes place, you're looking at about 30 days. By the time it gets to court, we're looking more like 60 days. Now, on certain offenses, when an arrest has been made, we have 90 days on misdemeanors to bring a case to trial. It's called the speedy trial rule. And if we can't bring that case to trial within 90 days, then we have expiration of speedy, and we'll lose cases to what's called the expiration of speedy. And for felony cases, it's 180 days or so. So those are some of the constraints that we have, but when we get a case and we're looking at it to see if this case was motivated by hate. So let's say that we have a battery case, and a battery is an unwanted touching by one person to another, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be any physical harm, but just that we can prove that that battery occurred. But if we can show that it occurred because of one of the bases for hate, so if it's a cultural reason or sexual identity, then or race, then that would mean that there's a hate crime enhancement. And when that enhancement is considered, we do that within our divisions. Once the case is made it out of intake and it goes up to the division, the attorneys who's looking at that case will look at the case to see, is there a reason for us to think that this could be a hate crime? Is there a reason for us to think that this case could have been based on, motivated by one of the protected classes? And then if so, then we'll consider a hate crime enhancement at that point. And what that means is that the punishment for that crime is increased because it is considered to be a hate crime. Then there's the plea negotiation process, right? So we say, all right, individual, we're charging you with this offense. We're going through the court process. We've come to our pretrial hearings. We're making this particular plea offer as a way to resolve the case. And sometimes plea offers come with a negative connotation. People are like, well, why are you pleading out so many cases? Well, let me talk to you a little bit about that. My office received 55,000 cases for processing last year. We have 148 lawyers. There's no way that we could try 55,000 cases. It's just not possible. There are 4,000 sworn law enforcement officers that we receive cases from, are 148 lawyers. And this isn't just unique to our circuit or my office. Throughout the country, the majority of cases, I believe, only 2% of cases resolve by trial, okay? So the system is built on plea negotiations. And if we could not plea cases out, if we were to enter some sort of a law that said there will be no more plea negotiations, every case has to be resolved by a jury trial, our system would crash. It would completely crash. There aren't enough judges for that. There aren't enough prosecutors for that. There aren't enough courtrooms for that. It's just not feasible under the current legal system that we have. So it's really important to understand that that's why most cases are resolved by plea agreement. But in the event that someone doesn't want to resolve their case by plea, that they want to exercise their constitutional right to go to trial, then we go to trial and the jury gets to decide whether or not a crime has been committed and the individual who is there actually committed the crime. And my prosecutors in my office will put together the very best case possible when we have all the evidence that we need, when we have a cooperating witness to go to court and actually tell what happened, we'll do that. So I want to talk really briefly about an initiative that my office has been working really hard on over the last year or so, and that is violence prevention in our community. We held a summit 2 weeks ago on violence prevention, and we had local elected officials as well as law enforcement and experts from all across the country come in and speak at our summit to talk to us about violence prevention initiatives across the country that have proven to be successful and how we can go about implementing some of those strategies here in our community. And I'm really pleased to say that we had a very, very positive outcome. We had a lot of positive responses. There's going to be a continuation of that summit so that we can bring funders to the table, because these things take money, they take resources, and sometimes getting those resources or relying on the government alone for provision of those resources is very difficult to do. So we're bringing in some governmental resources as well as private funders to see how we can begin funding some of those things right here in our community so that we can all feel and be safe in our daily lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. But have you been so educated tonight of just the whole the process and everything that goes on, and we really appreciate all the efforts that everyone is doing here. But also what I want to do is to provide you an opportunity to hear a success story of when we come together, act together, and we move forward together. I'd like to introduce to you Colin Poon. He is with REACH, but he's also with a grassroots organization called Make Us Visible. So Colin, if you could come on up. I'd like for him to, if you haven't heard already, to hear about a success story that is really near and dear, I know, to my heart, but as well to Colin's too.
Good afternoon or good evening, everybody. I'm sorry that I look a little underdressed in comparison to all the lawyers and special agents, but usually most high school students would be asleep by now, so I hope that comforts y'all a little bit that I at least came out. So my name is Colin Poon. I am a student volunteer with Make Us Visible Florida. So it's basically a community-based organization that works with, works with a number of different people from different religions, ethnicities, but it really focuses on Asian American and API issues. And so we would first, or before I start getting into that, I would just like to thank ACT and all the people for coming out to this event this evening. I know it's going a little past the deadline, so I'm going to try and make it, or the time deadline, I'm going to try and make it quick for y'all. And then I also just would like to recognize that it's AAPI Heritage Month. So, yay! Yes, May! Oh my gosh, yeah. So I'm going to give y'all a little illustration, sort of what our faces sort of state regarding Asian Americans. So today, Asian Americans number as 500,000 strong Floridians in our state. And they come from a variety of different religions and ethnicities, and our history trials, triumphs, and stories, all of them deserve to be told in our schools and in our communities, because all of us deserve to be recognized for our uniqueness, especially in a country that's built on such uniqueness and diversity. And every student should be able to learn about things like the Japanese incarceration that often aren't taught in schools, where Americans, men, women, and children, entire families, 2/3 of them being U.S. citizens during World War II, were detained for no other reason than the fact that their skin color was different, as well as their ethnic heritage. Every student should learn about those Americans, or about Americans who, with their families being interned, fought in the 44th Infantry, which was an all-Japanese unit that fought in World War II, when it was actually the unit that became the most decorated in all of American history. Despite the fact that their relatives were interned in camps by their own government, they still decided to fight for the U.S. and fight for their beliefs and their belief in American government and beliefs in American possibilities. And our struggles are American struggles. Our successes are successes for all of America. And our neighbors should be able to learn about these mistakes of the past, as well as the resiliency of our lives and the heritage of this nation as people and as Asian Americans, to be able to share those stories, and all of them, good and bad, to be able to reflect our history. And soon they will. And so going off of that, going back into what Make Us Visible Florida is, Make Us Visible Florida's mission is to activate and empower local communities to be able to build a curriculum and advocate for the integration of Asian American contributions, experiences, and histories in the K-12 classrooms here in Florida. And so actually we just passed a bill that actually includes this history and stories in Florida classrooms. And so that's going to be, and through this through our volunteers, this is all volunteer based, right? Make Us Visible Florida, it's not a bunch of politicians, not a bunch of lobbyists, it's a bunch of everyday people coming from multiracial, interfaith backgrounds. And we made it law, like I said, to have that API history in our classrooms. And so now API history will stand alongside Holocaust education, Hispanic contributions, women's contributions, African American history, and more on equal standing within our curriculum. To be able to include those stories within the American story and to include ourselves in the greater story of America. And as a community, we celebrate every step of progress, and this is certainly one of those steps. We also celebrate the passage of laws requiring school districts to report and establish plans to implement the teachings of African American history and strengthening hate crimes regarding anti-Semitism and anti-Asian hate. Our history as Americans, no matter the color of our skins, our religion, or our places of origin, they are intertwined and always will be a part of America. And now our curriculum within these K-12 classrooms will reflect that American diversity. And just as a lighter note, for those interested in education or Asian American history in general, Make Us Visible Florida is developing a curriculum lab that will assist with the implementation of that law that I just mentioned, because once a law comes into passes, now there's the implementation of it. And how does that look? How is our history reflected? What's going to be taught in schools, right? And that's up to the school districts. A state may pass a law, but it's often the local people that often have to implement it, like the League of Women's Voters was mentioning. There might be a law that's passed by the state, but it's often the local people that have to try and enact that, right? So then if you're interested in being able to help and contribute that, please just look at Make Us Visible Florida. We have a website. We also have an Instagram at Make Us Visible Florida. And also, I'd just like to recognize one of our representatives for our current bill sponsor in the House that helped pass it is here. I believe Anna Escamani, our original bill sponsor, was also here, as well as the state
I work for Paul and right? I love your energy. All right, great. So, yeah, so as you can see, when you come together as a community, we can make a difference, all right? So now we are at the point of Q&A. So what I'd like to do is, I believe we have some questions that has come up, and actually, someone that would like to at least open it up for a question. Nicole?
I'm not sure if this question is for Mr. Slaughter or for Deputy Lynn, but I identify as South Asian, and within my lifetime, the FBI added several communities in the South Asian community to their FBI hate crime data report. So Sikh and Muslims, we weren't always in the hate crime report. And so we've also in recent years seen a dramatic increase in hate crimes in our communities. And so in your opinion, I wanted to see if that was because there's actually a dramatic increase in the actual incidences, if it's in part because the FBI and other LEOs are now better trained and know how to classify those incidences better, or if it's because our community is more empowered and educated to report those, or if it's a little bit of all three. I guess it's more of an opinion, but.
My answer to you would be all three. I think that you summed it up quite well. We are a little bit more educated on what's going on. We're all working together as partners throughout the state, federal, local agencies. And people, like I said earlier, are saying something. So it's a combination of all three. And you know, the stats now are showing that hate crimes are up over the last 2 years. And again, it's a combination of what you just said. And I don't know if Tom has anything different from a federal.
The only thing I was gonna add is, the awareness, that's the key issue right now. And, that's, again, we're only as good as what the citizens do for us and what they let us know what's going on. It's very important, the saying you heard it over and over, see something, say something. And we're here available to you 24/7 at the sheriff's office to let us know. And if we can, like I said, immediately answer to you, then we'll get right back to you and make sure we get it squared away, okay?
Great, thank you. Yes, let me just pass this mic to you.
My name is Kam. I'm a local immigration attorney. My question is to State Attorney Ms. Worrell, which is you just mentioned that you had 50,000 cases. I'm not sure what kind of cases those are, but after July 1st of this year, you may expect more crimes for buying houses. That is from, if you are Chinese citizen and you are now green card or real citizens, then if you buy a house, accidentally, if you didn't know that the house you're buying are within the outside of 5 miles of military installation, then you're subject to a felony of 3rd degree. I look it up. I'm an immigration attorney. I'm not a criminal attorney. I look it up. It's 5 years in prison, and that is the law we just passed. And also the sellers, if he doesn't know or she doesn't know that his house is also outside of 5 miles of military installation, then he is subject to misdemeanor of misdemeanor 3rd degree. So that's 1 year imprisonment, correct? So you will see a lot of those cases that I will believe that if this law is not overturned. That is my personal comment. Thank
So that was really a comment, not a question. I want to start by saying that knowledge is an element of any crime, right? So there has to be some knowledge of the commission of crime, for us to be able to prove that a crime occurred. There are a lot of laws that have been passed this session that are very concerning to the general public. And that is why organizations like ACT are so important, because we have to act. We have to elect people who pass laws that represent the constituents that they serve. And when we stay home and we don't vote, then people who get elected don't necessarily represent the general public. So I share your concern. I have several concerns with the legislation that has come out of this past session, but all we can do is vote to put people in place who represent the will of the people.
Thank you for that. Yes, we have another question right here. Again, if you could, give us your name and your question.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sarah Bodger. I serve as a Deputy District Director for Congressman Maxwell Frost. Just to kind of piggyback on the state attorney's comments and this really critical legislation that just, or this really dangerous legislation that just passed at the state level. I wish our state representatives were here to address this, but it's absolutely right that this was passed at the state legislature level, which is dominated by a group that passed very anti-Asian legislation, right? I think it's very concerning, but I heard somebody laugh when they were like, you could get arrested for being a Chinese immigrant and buying a house in Florida. Yes, you can, because there's folks who were voted, elected, and are passing really dangerous legislation. So I just want to make that comment. I do actually have a question, and that question is actually for the supervisor elections. I want to do a fact check. So I have heard recently that 195,000 people were registered for vote by mail last year. This new legislation has passed, again, by a legislative body that is dominated by one group, and all of our vote by mail registrations are expired. Now that these 195,000 are expired, only now 8,500 people in the entire county are registered to vote by mail. Is that true?
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, so I can't say for sure one way or the other, but definitely there is a decline. I think that part of it has to do with when these laws are passed, especially in an off year when people aren't paying as much attention to the election information. They're not as aware, and it used to be that the vote by mail request was good for 2 federal election cycles, meaning for 4 years, basically, depending on when you made it. So people that made the request in 2020, typically it would have been good anyway until the end of 2022, but if you made the request in 2022, according to what the law used to be, it would have been good until the end of 2024. And so that change in people just not knowing, and because they don't pay attention until it's close to a presidential election year, I fully expect that there will be many people calling us close to the end of the primary and close to the end of the general next year saying, why did my vote by mail ballot never come? And part of that is the education problem of people not knowing that all of them expired at the end of last year, depending on when you made the request. I'm not sure about the exact numbers, but there has been a decline. We have been trying to make sure that for the municipal elections that we've had this past March, that people in those districts knew that vote by mail requests expired. Everybody will be getting a notice of elections towards the end of this year. Every voter in Orange County will be getting a notice of elections that states their vote by mail status on it. So for those whose vote by mail request has expired, they will receive, as long as their address is updated, a notice of elections that shows vote by mail status none on file, or expired 2022, or standing until 2024, something like that. So as long as everybody is looking out for that information, and of course we're putting it out on social media and all these other things, trying to get the word out, we're making sure at our community events that we're letting people know, then hopefully people will be able to fix that. If not, there is still always early voting and voting on election day, but as long as people know whether or not they will get their vote by mail ballot is good.
I'm sorry, I just had a follow-up question on that. So if folks register for vote by mail for the City of Orlando elections happening this November, will they have to request vote by mail again for the presidential election?
No, so if you choose to only get vote by mail for City of Orlando, then yes, you will only get it for City of Orlando, but there is an option on the request to get your vote by mail ballot for all elections for which you're eligible for through 2024. So as long as you make it a standing request, it will be good through 2024. Now again, at the end of 2024, all vote by mail requests expire again. So then they will need to renew their request after 2024 to continue to receive it through 2026.
Question, right?
Yeah, mine is more of a comment. As somebody, as I'm Sunaina Dumala, and as somebody who's fairly new to Orange County and Nickname, I'm pretty impressed with what ACT is doing. I just wanted to reiterate the importance of something like this by sharing my own personal story. And I know we are beyond time, but I'll try to be as quick as possible. And thank you for putting up that slide about being accountable. And I think I believe by that principle, it is really important to be self-accountable to make others accountable towards you. And pointing out with various concerns that are concerning for the AAPI community, whether it is gun control or hate crimes or immigration. And so going with that, into the background of my story, so 6 years ago, on February 22nd of 2017, my husband got murdered in a hate crime. It was a racial hate crime by a man who yelled, "Get out of my country." And so what followed after that incident was where I became a victim again because of the broken immigration system. Because though we were in the country for more than 10 years, we haven't received our green card. We were stuck in the backlog of the green card system. And I was on a dependent status to a husband, and so I lost the status to stay in the country. So what followed was a very long battle to be able to continue to live in America and continue to do what I'm trying to do right now. And so, and a further background into that story of how people are stuck in the backlog, there are about 1 million Indian immigrants and counting, and that number is increasing, who are stuck in the backlog. And what the study says is that it's going to take anywhere between 40 to 90 years for them to obtain their permanent residency. Imagine. I don't think so anybody would be alive by that time. And imagine about 1 million or more people who have no power to vote. And going back to your point again, most of those discussions end up as a dinner conversations because a majority of the community, first, they think that they are not American enough, they are not the constituents, and they can't speak up or raise their voice against this discrimination. Second, they don't have the confidence that something like this would be fixed. And so I think to end my comment, what I'm trying to say is, I think we are heavily rely on all of you who can vote, who can be our voices, to take this up to representatives, and I hope you can take up to your boss and say about this and the concerns that we have and how all of this is so interrelated, because there is so much of misinformation about immigrants, and yes, especially about the AAPI community, that we are the African community and all of that. But what is not being shared is these hardships that we go through, the helplessness that we live every moment, and how we feel like we don't have any control on like this. And so if there is any media present here, my request to them is, please show the other side, these hardships that we are going through, so that people are educated enough, and then there is enough awareness, and they don't fall into the misinformation that is being put across. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I know that we're running short on time, so what I'd like to do is actually, I had a question that came up, and I'd like to address it to Cam, because I'm going to hand it over to you, Cam. Is what is ACT doing to really, because I know that the intention is looking at getting more of the Gen Z and women voters. What is actually ACT going to do to get more Gen Z voters?
The recruit Colin. Hundreds of you. We have a group called Act Young, and by definition, the young stands for 18 to 24. So we have to make a lot of progress in that. We don't have enough time to go through it, but recruiting people like high school students, UCF students, Valencia, that's the thing. I'll end by just making 4 points because we're probably out of time. My parting message is pretty simple. Get involved. 30 minutes a week. 30 minutes a week dedicated to this. Participate in the process. Lots of processes were described. Understand them, participate. Third one is most important. Let's all vote. Sunaina just covered why we should be motivated to do that. And finally, let's hold our lawmakers accountable. And with that, have a good night.